Thank you so much, Vismaya. Respected Radhakrishnan sir, alumni coordinator Viju sir, and all dear teachers present here, and dear students. Let me share my screen. So a month ago, I had talked to Viju sir about how a lot of students have been approaching me on knowing how to apply abroad, how to go about the whole process. So I thought it would be best to address the whole lot of questions as a group to the whole batch, because I figured it'll be useful to share my experiences and the things that I learned during the process. So I named this presentation the Know-Hows to Applying for Masters Abroad. So I hope this helps you again. These are my experiences. And a lot of it is going to be synonymous to the places that you apply, because the process is almost the same for each country. I chose US. So yeah, where do you start? This is one of the questions that I got, because you are surrounded by different things. People tell you that there are exams that you need to pass. There is a thing called statement of purpose that you don't even know. And then you need to choose universities, and it's all a mess. So what do you do? The first and foremost step is to shortlist your countries of interest. And for that, you need to shortlist your programs. What programs do you want to pursue? Just, you may not know like the specifics of what you want to do. For example, I did not have a specific field of interest. I was still very lost, but I knew I wanted to keep my options open. So I chose biotechnology. That's how I started hunting for universities and countries. For me, the choice of choosing a country was easy because I'm a US citizen, and it would make sense that I choose US and go to US because of the perks that would come along with it. But some of the factors that you would consider while choosing countries are scholarship opportunities, which are pertain to universities, like what opportunities do you get there? The living expenses, is it an expensive area? Can you afford it? The weather, do you have a preferred weather? Like, can you manage the cold? So I was a person who thought that I could not manage extreme weather. I used to wear a hoodie all the time when it rained back in India. But here I have realized that I like the cold. So that's not an issue at all for me right now. And also, yeah, the tuition fee, if you want. Countries have varying tuition fees. So you weigh the pros and cons. You also consider the biotech niche. So what program of interest is yours? Like, which field do you want to go? Like, there are many arenas like stem cell engineering, gene therapy, CRISPR-Cas9, so many new things that are coming up as well. So choose your countries wisely. Like, people choose UK, Germany, Switzerland. My classmate Rohit has gone to Sweden. So talk to people and choose countries. And from that, you go to the next step, which is shortlisting universities. Now, this I did have a huge starting trouble, because did someone put something in the chat box? Can you hear me, or is that a question?
No, Gigi, I was telling about the Q&A session.
Okay, yeah. So this I did face a huge roadblock, because again, you do not have anyone to guide you. And for me itself, even after shortlisting just one country, finding the correct universities was a big task, because when you Google like universities for masters in biotechnology, you're going to get so many universities and you do not know which is a good university, right? So I ended up like making a Word document with the universities that I found out for masters in biotechnology, clinical biotechnology. I got so many search results. From there, I went and shortlisted. I went to the college site, shortlisted, check the syllabus, what the program offers. Because again, you are investing money to go for masters, and you want to make sure that the subject that you're choosing is what you want to learn ultimately. So for me, the syllabus mattered a lot, and it should matter to you as well. Not just the ranking of the university, not just the prestige of the university. So, and then I referred YouTube videos, and I saw that you're supposed to check the ranking. So when I checked the ranking, a lot of universities got cut because they were lower ranks, and of course you do not want to do that. So I suggest that when you first check for universities, check the world ranking, but also the national and course rankings. Because again, a university that's maybe around 150 in world ranking, in the US it'll be maybe 50 or 35. So again, your national ranking is what matters ultimately, because you're going to that country. And again, check the course rankings as well, which you will get if you specifically search what's the course ranking for medical biotechnology in UIC. You're going to get the search result for that. So check the program offers, what is the placement rate. Again, choose universities based on what you want to do. Do you want to do an industry related job, like work in a pharmaceutical company, or go for PhD? So consider that as well. And even if you don't know that, that's fine. For now, I know that I want to go to the industry, work for a while, and then see. And again, that's because I've not started my research. So from next sem onwards, I'm going to start my research. So if I feel like I am keen in pursuing research, I might join PhD. Things change. So it's just about what you feel right now and what might be better for the future. You just go with your decisions like that. Again, check for tuition fee, your scholarship opportunities, and scope of on-campus jobs. On-campus jobs matter a lot because again, you're living alone. So I work as a laboratory assistant right now over there. I was offered that job. So check. So universities have scholarships. There are certain universities that will offer scholarships. So check that. Are you supposed to, prepare a separate document to apply for it? What is the tuition fee? Is it a whole lot? Like, is it, check the cost benefit ratio. Like again, for example, the Ivy Leagues in US, it's really expensive. So, are you getting what you need from that as well? Check that. So these are some of the websites that I went to. I mean, when you Google it, you get it, student.com or College Dunia. These were two the websites from where I got a list of universities. So with this, you can, shortlist and make an Excel document and keep it ready, because you're going to fill that Excel document later on. The next step is check the application deadlines. So this is why you need to start your university hunting really early, because by the time I thought I was going to take an year break and go for fall 2022. So I started the whole process late. So by the time I had found universities and I checked their deadlines, a lot of them were for December 1st, for example, in the US, and I'm sure in many of the countries, check the deadlines. So what happens is you can somehow maybe you can get your letters of recommendation, you can get your transcript ready, your SOP ready, but you have exams to clear. For example, IELTS, your language proficiency, or GRE. You need time to prepare for that. You need to clear that. You need to wait for the results to come and send it to the university. And I did not write my GRE then, so I missed all these deadlines. Most of the universities I could not apply. So I applied for universities that had deadlines in Feb 1, March 1. So make a note of that. And so you then what you do is you check the application requirements. What all do they need, right? For example, Johns Hopkins was a university that I wanted to go. But when I checked the requirements, they needed a transcript up to the 8th semester, and they needed a complete degree certificate before you close your application, which I wouldn't have been able to because I was in my 3rd year. So I could not apply for Johns Hopkins. I sent a mail and I asked them. The pro tip was always send mails if you don't know something about the university, or it's unclear from the website. So do that. And then from there, you plan your further steps and you start an application. Go to their website, go to their portal, start an application, because that helps you a lot. They start sending in mails about updates, programs, and everything. So you get to know what the college is. For example, Johns Hopkins still sends me, apply for spring 2022 and their updates. So while you're applying, it's great to get the updates about the college and their program. So they do that. So it's good. The next one is, these are the basic requirements for an application. So many students ask me this. So, let's go one by one through the whole process. So most of the countries and universities need a language proficiency test. It's usually English. So in the US, I wrote TOEFL. IELTS is also very common and used for other countries as well. You need a graduate record examination, again, accepted for US, Canada. You need a statement of purpose, letters of recommendation, an academic CV, and your official transcript. So, language proficiency test and GRE. Uh, I really got intimidated about this TOEFL and GRE because, people make it sound like a huge thing, and I thought I wouldn't clear it, honestly. It's really bad, but then you realize that they're just testing you. For example, in TOEFL and IELTS, they're just testing you, if you know English, if you're grammatically speaking, properly, if you know how to read and write, and if that's there, you're going to pass the test. Now it's about getting the higher scores. Getting scores in the higher range is important because it gives you a competitive advantage over the thousands of applicants or applications that are coming in to the admission officers, right? So for TOEFL and IELTS for that matter, they'll basically have 4 sections: speaking, listening, reading, writing. Uh, so the tip is to understand, and for GRE also, the tip is to understand the mode of examination. What is the format of the exam, right? So if you go without knowing the format, because the exam expects some sort of an input from you, and if you just go about it without knowing what the format is and what the examiners are expecting, you will get a low score. So for that, go to their website, their official. For example, for TOEFL it is ETS. Go to IELTS official website, read about the details of the exam. What are the different sections? I used ETS's official TOEFL and GRE prep book. IELTS will have its official book as well. Use that. And for TOEFL specifically, for the speaking section, so you can speak English, right? We can speak English, we get it, but then for sometimes for speaking sections they give you like 60 seconds and a topic on the spot, and you're supposed to speak. You don't have to speak fast, you can speak slow. It just has to make sense, but you should not use a lot of or grammatical errors in your speaking section, because that will you will be penalized for it, you will lose marks. So that's why you have to prepare. So Noteful is actually a YouTube channel that has been doing TOEFL prep for years. I refer to that channel. I practiced the speaking section with them. Um, Same is the case for GRE. GRE is also, you have to prepare. So these are the basic tips that you would do. Attempt mock exams. Mock exams help you to understand what the exam really is, especially because you're in a time crunch. Everything you might be able to do in 4-5 hours, taking your sweet time, but when you have 30 minutes to complete a section, it's a whole different story. Consistently solve questions. Now this is for GRE because GRE has both verbal reasoning and quantitative reasoning. Quantitative reasoning is way more easier than your placement aptitude test. Okay, it's very basic, but do not underestimate it because it has fixed sections. You know the type of questions that that's gonna come. You just have to solve them daily because there's some trick element to it. That's all. You refer YouTube videos and practice reading and writing section. So you're going to really underestimate this. For TOEFL and IELTS, the reading section is easy because they just want to see if you're comprehending things well. But for GRE, that is not the case. GRE is tricky. They're really seeing who is the better candidate over here, right? Who has better understanding, who can analyze what's given in the paragraph. So all you need to do is keep practicing the GRE questions. I used GRE Edge, was a site that I used. You get questions from that. Vocab session is a very important part of GRE. There are a set of GRE words that will come, and it's not words that you use on a daily basis. You just have to, spend time every day to learn new words. I used Magoosh. It's a really great app. It has flashcards available. So, every day you learn some of the frequently used words, and that really helped a lot for GRE. So these are some of the tips. The key is to know the exam, attempt lots of mocks. Kaplan test, it was another mock site that I used. GRE before GRE, the week before GRE, I just continuously did mocks. For one whole week, I did different mocks. I did the ETS mock, Kaplan mock, GRE Edge mocks. So same for the case of TOEFL. Do mocks. You get mocks with the official textbook that you get. So do that and you will ace IELTS, TOEFL or GRE for that matter. Just have to start early. For me, I started late again because I thought I had a whole year to prepare. That's where, you have to really um, go about it really fast and efficiently. But yeah, don't worry about it. So if you're in your third year right now, you have time to prepare properly and attempt the exam. Make sure you attempt the exams way before your application deadline, because your results come in about 15 days later. It takes 15 days for your official results to come in, and only then you can send it to your university, right? So again, choosing universities before this really matters, because along with TOEFL and GRE, I know you can send or else there's a fee for sending your scores to the university for GRE and TOEFL, but there will be 5 universities that you can send for free for GRE, because you're paying for GRE, and TOEFL you get 4. So that way you get 4 and 5 universities free where you can send in your universities. So make sure you have these universities in mind. I did not find UIC yet. I did not apply for UIC free. I found UIC way later, so I had to pay and send the scores, but it was worth it. So yeah, those are the little mistakes that I did, which I do not, want you to do, because again, that's a great thing. Because again, application fees, it's a lot. You would want to save money for your sending scores, right? So try really hard to get good scores. Like 100 plus is a good score for TOEFL, but if you get 110 plus, it's great. TOEFL is out of 120. Similarly for IELTS, 7 and above is considered really good. Coming to statement of purpose. A statement of purpose is a document that holds so much power, okay? And I did not know what statement of purpose was. It can make or break your application. It's a hit or a miss, because you get thousands of applications. From admission officers get thousands of applications, and statement of purpose is something that they use to evaluate you. Are you a good fit for the university? Why should you be here, right? Are you a good candidate? What are you? And that is very different from an academic CV, okay? Here you need to show your passion for the subject. So for when we apply for masters, even for me, you don't have a lot to put in your SOP, because you've gotten minimal exposure. Like I did 2-3 internships. I used 2020 to do a lot of other co-curriculars, like poster presentations and webinars and stuff. So if you have all of that, you can somehow go about it. Now, it's not about what you did that you write in your SOP. It's about what you gained from it. What is your motivation for going for masters? And you would want to include stuff like your research background. So again, your research background would be somehow, boast what you've done in your undergrad, or things that you've learned in your internships, and tie that to how that motivates you, or how that has given you the passion to pursue a particular subject. So you're telling them that you want to apply for this program in this university. So you need to address questions like, why this program? Why this university? Why this country? Right? So that's the purpose. You need to mention your purpose very clearly. It should be personal. So again, although SOP is it's an official document, it is used to understand your character, your attitude, your passion and stuff. So you need to give a personal touch to it. Sometimes it's not a official essay. You have to give it a creative touch, which brings me to my next point. Creative, or add personal stories to it. As in, I did this or that. So I've given a link in the next slide. So it should be personal, rather than, although you write the document in a formal tone, you want to write it in a conversational tone. That's one of the things about an SOP, because you're conversing with the admission officer. You're telling him, why. You're narrating your reason. And the tone should be persuasive. Like, you really need to, the admission officer should think that, okay, this seems like a worthy candidate. And SOP has the potential to override any of the flaws in your application, like like a low GPA, or an average GRE or TOEFL score. Even for other countries, SOP is there. It's often called letter of motivation. For Rohit, it was letter of motivation, if I remember. But it's the same thing. So you need to go to your university website and see their SOP requirements. They give you a word limit, probably. So when you start writing, keep in mind of the word limit, because when I first drafted my SOP, I'll go to the next slide. When I first drafted my SOP, I wrote 2 pages, okay? And then I found UIC later, right? So UIC had a word limit of 1,000 words. Trust me, when you start writing, you think that, you can fit in things within the word limit, but you can't. You really struggle. And that's okay. But that's why it's important to draft and redraft. So that brings me to the tips to tackle your SOP. So you first put on paper, just start typing things that you want to know. What do you want your university officers to know about you that will not be available on your academic CV? So they get what GPA you got from your academic CV, that you're an intelligent student, that you've done your internships, etc. They are going to get all of that from your CV. But what you are and what you've gained, what is your essence you need in your SOP, right? So make sure it is not a detailed version of your CV. Nobody wants to see a detailed version of your CV and you're out if that's what you submit as your SOP. Make sure you do that. So draft and redraft. My first draft was completely different from what I had eventually submitted for my SOP. You go through several drafts, because once you write, you realize, okay, you have to do this and this. Send it to your family or people that you have gone abroad. They give you opinions about, maybe you can make this and this better. Take those opinions and and criticisms and try changing it up. Now at one point you'll reach a point where you think, okay, this is it, I think this is good. Okay, you get that feeling when around like maybe the fifth or sixth SOP. I went to 12 drafts of SOP, but still, when you reach that point, stop taking opinions from people, because again, every other person is going to have a different perspective and they're going to cloud your thoughts and you are going to feel really lost, because again, the whole SOP process can be quite overwhelming that way. So try not to take too much of criticisms or anything. Write a document, show people, and once you feel you're ready, see if it's it's in accordance with the requirements of the university. Another major point is that do not write a general SOP. If you're applying to 7 universities, do not submit the same SOP for all the 7 universities. That's not how it works. The university admission officers know, they like it when it's specific. So when you why this university is an important paragraph, because you're telling them why do you want to be here, right? There, go to their website, see the specifics of the university, what they do. Try quoting some events that they do, or a research, a particular lab, a professor's work. Quote that, I really am interested in this and this. Instead of saying, I think this university will be great because it will complement my interests, rather than that, say, because I come from this background and I've had this interest, I feel that this laboratory and this Dr. Radhakrishn's work, or I am interested in that. Mention specifics like that and tailor your SOP for each. So I made a draft which had common intro, the main paragraphs, the conclusion, but my university specific paragraph was different for the 3 universities I applied. You can refer YouTube videos. That's one thing I did. You underestimate what's on the internet. It's actually really useful. So you get YouTube videos. I actually found that very late, like after I submitted my SOP. You get specific YouTube videos where students who have got into universities talk about their SOP, or read out their SOP. So you get an idea of what they've written and what each university requires. Now for US, they want a more creative touch to it. Like they would, it's very important that you have an eye-catching introduction, something interesting that the admission officers are like, okay, let's read this student's application, let's see what he has. So it's very important that you have a good SOP. Letters of recommendation. So letters of recommendation, again, for you to be recommended, you need to do things and build your profile, right? So in 2020, like I said, I did a lot of extra work because I realized I did not have much that I could put in an academic CV or even ask a recommendation for. So again, do good and be good in college. Participate in activities. Be very enthusiastic in labs, and your GPA, it's okay even if you have a low GPA and you think that, can I go for masters? Of course you can. It's just that every other element about you has to stand out, and that's just about being passionate about what you want to do. So letters of recommendation, you can't go to like any person and just say that, can you give me a recommendation letter? And usually in universities they require 2 to 3. I required 3. The people I asked for my recommendation letters were Radhakrishnan sir, Biju sir, and then my internship guide, I went to RTCB, so I got it from Dr. Moinak Banerjee. Because all these 3 people were people who could evaluate me academically. All of them have closely associated me with me, and they've known me for a long while. So they have things to write about me, right? So that is an important thing, and letters of recommendation has a good weightage for your application, and it's really important that you have good letters of recommendation. My professors gave me great letters of recommendation. I was like, wow, oh, they really love me. So yeah, I was really happy when they gave me those recommendation letters. The next aspect is an academic CV. So academic CV is where you put in all your info about what you've done in your undergrad. Basically, you would want to highlight things specific to your program, mostly like you'll go in your reverse chronological order. Do not use online templates. Don't, at least for the US, I know. Make your own academic CV in Word, somehow formatted really well. Categorize the things you've done into headings like experience or internships, education. Include all the co-curriculars and extracurriculars. So co-curriculars are your academic oriented things like webinars, poster presentations, and paper presentations. Our college gives numerous opportunities for that. You really, it's really great if you can pull up a poster or a paper and present it, because again, that is a good experience and it gives you advantage. It's all about building your profile. um, at the same time, alongside, build your LinkedIn. So when you start doing things, make your LinkedIn profile. I've noticed a lot of juniors have started, they connected with me. That's great. So update your LinkedIn profile, keep everything up to date. It's okay if you've started slow and you don't have many things. Put your education, what you've done for your internships, post about different certificate courses that you've done, attended webinars. Just talk about, don't just post the certificate. Talk about what you learned in that webinar, or what you presented for that poster. It helps in engaging, build your connections with associated people in the industry, professors, and connect with people from the universities that are applying. Follow the college university pages. All of that they look into, and you can put your complete LinkedIn profile link on your academic CV. It should be formal and crisp, around like 3 to 5 pages, well categorized. Make sure to include extracurriculars as well. I included dance, singing. Just make sure that at first when I did my academic CV, I just did extracurriculars all under one heading, and you could not distinguish what was what. Like I had MUNs in it, I had speaking skills, leadership, everything in it. And then I realized it was better to categorize as dance, leadership roles. So do that, and put references if you want. So I put from people that you've gotten your recommendation letters, put it on the side or anywhere, the reference details, their contact details, and the names. And have a good academic CV. Transcripts. A lot of students have asked me what transcripts are. I did not know what transcripts are. I did struggle. I called Shimimis to ask what they are, and where you can apply from. Before, it used to be sending an email out, but now you get it on your KTU website. So if you go to the certificates tab, you see apply for transcripts. So again, most of the universities, check your website. Okay, most of the universities, you can apply during your third year, meaning you need a complete transcript till your sixth semester. So that's what I submitted. So initially, when I started my application, my sixth semester results hadn't come yet. So I did submit my, I got transcripts till my fifth semester. I had uploaded it, but I did not submit my application, right? So when I got my sixth semester, till the sixth one, I uploaded that. So you can pay a fee and get your transcript. And again, degree certificate, that's why I didn't put it here. Most universities don't need a degree certificate while you're applying. They just tell you that before you get your admission, which is, when you complete your undergrad, you have to submit your certificate. So for me, I had 6 months time to submit my official transcript with the 8 semesters and degree, and I submitted it right now. So if you have doubts regarding that, you should definitely mail the universities. It's all right, they respond within like 2 business days or so. They respond, and that's fine. So that's how I came to know that John Hopkins did not accept transcripts till your sixth semester, and they needed a complete graduated student. So yeah, you can take your official transcripts and submit that as well. So this was my timeline. It was pretty rushed. I suggest that you start working on it early. Like a few students from second year asked me, what should I do now? Work on building your profile, doing extracurricular stuff. Do not don't just go about just the syllabus, what you're studying, because biotech is a huge field. I mean, if you want to pursue biotech, there are so many things that you can do. Coursera is a place where I did so many certificate courses, because SCT had a subscription and we could do free certificate courses. And then so I did shortlist my universities, check deadlines, and that was around maybe August, September. I scheduled the GRE TOEFL date. I started the preparation. I requested for LORs, prepared my academic CV. I requested the transcripts. I started an application, worked on my SOP, attempted my exams. My scores came in. I applied for 3 universities: Brown University, UIC, and Columbia University. And then you wait. They get back within 1 to 2 months. And they tell you, and it's all right. Even if you get rejected, it's all right. That's why I had limited options again. I applied very late, so there were only 3 universities that I found that I found interested in. That's why I applied for 3, and I got back from 2. I got from Brown University and UIC. Brown University is an Ivy League, but I felt that UIC would really benefit me better. So again, that's the thing. When ultimately, when you get all these offer letters, you need to choose wisely. It was a long decision making process, because again, you are like, oh, Ivy League, that prestige, do you want that? But then again, I was like, USC is an amazing college too. So it's a public university, the perks are equally great. So I was like, do I want the name, or ultimately do I want the skills, the knowledge? Do I want training? And UIC gave that. Like, the placement rate was high, a lot of students go to the industry and PhD, so I chose that. So you really grow during the application process, and it's really great that if you want to go for masters, because there's a lot out there. So people ask me how masters is abroad and what skills do you need. Masters abroad is great. I was talking to Radhakrishnan sir before. The whole system is different. You will not get grades by mugging up what you know. So I'm doing medical biotechnology right now. So again, UIC, I found it accidentally. I was talking to a senior. She was also applying. She told me, check universities in Chicago. And I was like, okay. And I checked UIC, and for some reason, when you go through the courses list, you usually stop at B, which is biotechnology. I was just looking for masters in biotechnology. For some reason, I scrolled all the way down and I saw medical biotechnology, and I was like, whoa, that's great. Like, I know I don't want to do anything related to plants or, genetic engineering of plants or anything. I was more inclined to the human side of it, or treatment side of it. And I was like, this is great. I checked the syllabus of it, and I was really attracted to the course. Uh, so in my case, for medical biotechnology, you learn a lot in masters. Okay, especially since our undergrad course is biotechnology and biochemical engineering. What you learn is very limited over there, and compared to the biotech aspect of it, because there's so much research happening outside. The syllabus is also updated. For example, we learned the main core courses for molecular biology and immunology. Immunology I did struggle in the beginning because immunology is not a course that we had in our undergrad, and so studying a course that had no basics, it was quite tough in the beginning. Mol bio, on the other hand, you had the basics. You've been studying since forever. Even in your 12th, you studied stuff. So, but immunology, when I started studying, I was like, this is great. I love it. I like immunology now. So it's about, learning new things. And alongside, I had stem cell. So I took two electives. I took stem cell engineering and drug discovery. Both eventually interested me a lot. Stem cell is a booming field, stem cell engineering, and you have so much going on outside. Uh, Practical skills matter a lot. So people ask me, what skills do you need for masters? Honestly, so I thought I was not ready for masters because, again, we had minimal exposure to the actual biotechnology techniques. I thought, I had to stay back for a year, work or do internships and stuff. But honestly, at least I think I'm grateful for the university I chose. There, they give importance to training you, like cell culture and all. I've never done cell culture. I didn't even know the name of this, T25 flasks. Those are the flasks over here that you see that are used for culturing cells. Pipetting skills. So this is a multi-channel pipette, and you have the micro pipette, and you never get to do pipetting back in India. And pipetting is immensely important in the industry, because if you go even to pharmaceutical industries or gene therapy companies and everything, the precision matters a lot, right? So you need to upskill yourself. These pipettes over here, I never saw them. I didn't know they existed. These are serological pipettes. They're used for pipetting higher volumes, basically, like media or anything like that, of that sort. um, so all of this I do not have experience, and I'm still here because, again, you learn. You come here, you have to put some effort, obviously. So initially I had this thing where I'm actually the youngest in my batch, because, again, I came right after I graduated. There are people 24, 25 years that have done 2, 3 internships, and it's competitive. Okay, the world is competitive, masters is competitive. Everyone needs grades, everyone needs on campus jobs, they need to get into the job world. Everyone's competitive, which gives you a drive. The thing is not to give up. You know what you're coming for, but even though sometimes it's hectic, and I'm really grateful and I appreciate what I'm learning in masters, because it's something I always wanted to do. Study more about biotechnology, get more exposure. So cell culture is something you would do for stem cell cancer research. Anywhere you'll do cell cultures. Pipetting is a standard. Agarose gel electrophoresis and PCR you have done in your undergrad. For mol bio, if you're taking anything related to molecular biology, genetics and all, you would find yourself doing these two a lot. SDS page, again, you've studied the theory of it. So another thing is, when you come for a master's, you finally see all these things that you've learned as theory in your undergrad. Okay, and that's great. So just be confident in yourself, and try to do skills. You might see other people who are really great at what they do. Like my first lab, my first mol bio lab, was really stressful because everyone knew pipetting. Of course, pipetting is just up and down, but then you get that intimidation that oh, everyone already knows pipetting. I'm new here, I do not know if I can do this. And you get that whole thing where you don't know if you can make it, but you can. I went through all of that. I know how masters is, and I just completed one semester. uh, it was a great experience. So coming from the background we have, it might get a tough, it might get intimidating and a bit of tough in the beginning. But make sure to choose something that you're passionate about. Make sure that you choose a course that you want to do. I saw so many interesting courses in the Google Forms that you filled. Genetic engineering, stem cell therapy, and I was like, oh, that's great. Make sure to read about them. If you're taking something as specific as that, that's the thing. So when I took medical biotechnology, I'm getting exposed to all of that, and then I chose what I wanted. So currently I chose prostate cancer lab, and I'll be studying a certain therapy, like a certain way of treating cancer. So cell culture is something that I had no interest in. I mean, I didn't know what cell culture was. I did not have experience in it. So after coming here, they gave us something called skills training, where they gave us cells to maintain culture. You also learn a lot of theory behind a lot of things, which is amazing. So I chose something that is heavily dependent on cell culture right now, and I'll be starting, and I'm excited for that. I thought I liked molecular biology a lot before coming here. But after coming here and doing the practicals, I realized, like the techniques, it's not my thing. I am more interested, like you do a lot of PCR, you do. I thought I loved rDNA technology, where the gene editing I'm still keen on, but mol bio in general, I didn't want something. So there are mol bio labs over here. You have different labs. You have stem cell lab, mol bio lab, cancer lab, vaccine lab, immunology lab, and everything. Uh, so only when you start doing it right, you'll know if you like that or not. I thought I was going to choose a mol bio lab until I saw, what was there in the field, what you do in the field, and I realized I like cell culture more. So it's about getting into the field, putting yourself in, exposing yourself into the different research opportunities, and choosing wisely of what you want. SDS page, again, I was saying, you would do that. It's a starting point for many techniques like Western blotting. You must have learned, where you check the protein expression. It's done in most labs. So these are the common techniques that you would find yourself in or doing. So yeah, try to, I'm really happy that a lot of students are keen on knowing at least about masters, and I hope my talk really helped you guys. These were just my experiences, because I know how much I struggled to get about the application process as such, because you need someone to just sit with you and give you a big picture, because you're really lost when you don't know, what's this, what's that, you don't know. So I thought, it would be great if I was able to tell my juniors, so that they have an easier process and a better understanding of things. And I really hope that you guys, if you want to pursue the field, masters is a great choice. There are so many country options, and I think you guys will do great. All the very best. I am open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ichi, for your guidance and useful advice. I really hope everyone present here got a perfect pitch insight about the session. So if anyone wants to clear your queries directly, you may please unmute your mics and clarify them now. And if you're having any difficulties, you can also post your questions in the chat box and it shall be answered.
Okay. Did you consult any travel agency or something? What's your opinion? Okay. I did not consult a travel agency, because, again, I'm a US citizen and traveling was not an issue for me, even during the COVID. Um, I do not need a visa because I was a citizen. So traveling was never an issue for me. So I did not. But if there are a lot of Indians that, go out. So yes, I suggest talk to people that have gone outside. Like, I'll give you contact details if you want. There's Keshav, a senior. There's Shreya, who just went to Texas University. There's Rohit, I can ask them and let you know, like, talk to people who have gone out. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Is there something that you felt really stood out in your application? Um, uh, I feel like my academic CV was strong. I think I was actually really proud by the end of it that I did so much and my CV was filled with stuff and all of that I did in 2020. My SOP, I don't know, you never know. But I did get, I did get back from, Brown University did accept me. So I think everything was decent. Uh, but yeah, just make sure if you have good GRE and TOEFL scores or IELTS scores and a good CV and a good SOP, you should be good to go. Is that okay, Sarah?
Yeah, Chechi, thank you.
Yeah.
Chechi, what about extracurriculars? Does it help having a lot of extracurriculars?
Yeah. So depending on the university, yes. Usually universities like, people who are, multifaceted. They like when, they're just not confined into the academic space. So I have a lot of leadership experience. So I highlighted all of that, like leadership, um, anchoring. Even, you guys must know that in SCT also I did a lot of, because I like anchoring. So whatever you like, try focusing on that. Dancing, singing, I put all of that in my SOP. They put great value for stuff like that. I put my piano experience in it. So yeah, do extracurricular sports. I do not have a sports background, so I did not include sports, but I'm assuming it's a good thing to put into as well.
Hi, Chichi. I'm Anslet.
Hi. Yeah, hi Anselet. How are you?
Chichi, will there? I'm fine, Chichi.
Yeah.
Chichi, will there be any difference for those students who are opting for fall 2022 or spring 2023? Because I heard that the chance of getting the scholarship for spring 2023 students will be comparatively lesser than fall students, and also
Yeah.
the internship opportunities will vary among these students. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah. And for the US, it is always advised to go for the fall intake because again, the number of students that are admitted is more. The scholarship is opportunities is more for fall intake than spring. Spring is like, if you want to get into the university right now, and you have no option, you would rather get in faster. Yes, but the chances are likely, you have a better advantage when you apply in fall. What's your opinion on doing masters in UK? Masters in UK, I think is it's also great. There are many. So our super senior Keshav, he did his masters in University of Glasgow. Um, just go to the it matters about what you want to do, even the program. Go to the UK universities. I had searched some of the universities, but again my preference was US. But in UK as well, the same process. Check the intake, check the job prospects. What do you want to do? Are there good courses? It's all there. You could ask people who went to UK as well. Yes, check YouTube videos. You'll get a lot of insights on that. YouTube is a place where you get everything. Just check what you get, the pros and cons, and that helps you weigh even things that I can't readily explain. People who have been there, like even the job opportunities, or ease of getting jobs, living there, and all of that. And even UK is the weather of UK. Everything matters. So yeah. Yeah, no problem. Any more
Chechi,
questions?
also,
Yeah.
some universities have the exams waived, no? So
Yeah.
is that good or bad?
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, the exams, especially due to COVID, even when the universities I checked, a lot of them had GRE and TOEFL. No, not TOEFL. TOEFL is not mostly wavered because TOEFL is a language proficiency test, but GRE. I've seen a lot of, and that's actually great. If you do not, if it's not, if it's wavered, you don't have to write the exam, provided that's the university that you're looking for. But it's always safe to attempt those exams because you never know when you want the exam, when you need the scores. So yeah, it's not a bad thing that if the universities say that they waived it, that is not a requirement in the application. And even if you've written the GRE scores and you think I'll submit it anyway, see if I have a advantage over the other applicants, you're not going to get an advantage because they've explicitly mentioned that we're not going to consider your GRE scores. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about other people submitting your GRE scores, and it doesn't matter if they waived it.
Okay. Thank you, Chechi.
Yeah, no problem.
So if it's wavered, do we have to work more on our profile or?
It's an additional. It's a requirement. You work more, meaning you have to work equally with or without the exams. All of them have equal importance, and all of them are dependent on each other. Like if you have a good academic CV, means that you've done a lot of things, means that you have things to write in your SOP, means that you will get a good like a recommendation letter. You know what I mean? So you're going to work on it. It's not just working more on a particular thing, because it's all dependent on each other. Did that answer your question,
I
Sarah?
think you can ask more
Yes,
questions.
sir.
You can ask more questions. Our students can ask more questions.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chechi, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. What will be your doubts? Just get it clarified
Yeah.
by Amy.
How much time do you encourage to start this whole process? If I'm starting at zero, from which course to start with to getting admitted in universities? Vishnu, which year are you in right now? Are you in second year, third year? Can you just let me know? For someone
Yes, I
who's
am
interested in
fourth year.
Oh, you're fourth year. Okay. And you want to go for fall 22 or 23? Do you want to take an year break?
I wish to do an internship, so
Yeah.
I prefer one break.
One break. Okay. So then you have time. And now would be the right time to start planning. You do not want to rush it. The more time you give for your, GRE, if you're going to the US, or even TOEFL and IELTS, the more time you give to all of these things, the quality of your profile will increase. And if you're rushing in the end, again, you can still you can still bring out a good profile and good quality application, but it's going to take a toll on you. So start early. Now's a good time to start. Choose your countries, check your requirements, schedule tests, alongside your internship, start preparing for the exams, and do it. But then still, if you're applying for fall 2023, the applications would be in December. So December 1, 2022 would be most of the university's deadlines. So by then, you would have done everything you need and you can start applying.
Thank you, Jishi.
Yeah.
How much time will it take for a GRE preparation?
Okay. So again, it depends on how, what are your strengths. Okay. So again, if math is okay for you, you can just daily solve problems and that's about it. For me, I had to give more effort to the verbal section because again, my vocabulary game was not strong. For GRE, it is really important that you work on your verbal section, even reading. So reading section is really tough, complicated, as in you need practice. I did not have good reading speed also. So again, you have tough paragraphs. You need to understand what they're saying and then answer the tricky question, like, comprehension passage questions. So practice on that. So I started very late, which is why I found it this difficult. So if you start early, you can give ample time for each section. prepare each section on maybe alternate days, continuously prepare for the vocab daily, do vocab, learn new words, keep solving problems. 6 months at least, I would say, if you're starting from scratch, not intensive prep. If you're giving 6 months, slowly you build your skills. And that's if you need a really good score. So GRE is out of 340, and 320 above is considered good. You're good to go if you have 320 above. So it depends on your strengths. If you have good, but if you're a good reader, you read well, your vocabulary is also strong, then you would probably have to put little effort. Again, you would have to solve problems, learn the examination mode. But of course, 3 months, 2 months would be fine.
Thank you, Chechi.
Yeah.
Chechi, Marin raised a question. That is,
Yeah.
for someone who's interested in immunology, how broad is medical biotechnology?
Okay. So if you know that, you want to go for immunology, if you want to go into the vaccine field and everything, definitely go for immunology itself, right? It's a great field. There's vaccine development and so much that you can study. There's immunotherapies. Medical biotechnology, I know about my course. So immunology, you study it as a core course here, and then you have labs for it. So it depends. You have to go and check your syllabus. I don't know how many colleges have medical biotechnology. I just came across this one in the US. I do not know. The one thing you can do is search, go to the universities and check for immunology courses as such, and then go check your medical biotechnology. If you know that's what you want, focus on immunology. Do a master's in, immunology or virology, or whatever you want. That's fine. The only thing is, if you have it specific, in case you want to change your mind, that's where you have to, be like. So initially I thought, I'll do masters in molecular biology and genetics, and also if I had done that, I wouldn't have been able to go to cancer, because what if the university did not have that exposure and I did not know? That's why if you don't have a specific field of interest, it's important that you keep your options open. Otherwise, it's fine. Is that okay, Mary?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Chechi, in European countries, there are two intakes: summer intake and winter intake.
Okay.
So which is better? Like,
Actually, I actually did not go into the European country research at all. So I actually don't know. I know there's winter and summer intakes. You could, again, I can look, I can check, and then I'll let you know, like the queries that you have. But again, all these questions, the answers to them are available on the internet. Again, YouTube video is a great source, and check for seniors that have gone there in European countries. But yeah, I suggest that you first go through YouTube videos and see the pros and cons of summer and winter, and you'll probably get something similar to the fall and spring intake. You'll know, just check for, scholarship opportunities, which has a higher intake opportunity, as in which has a higher chance of getting admitted. Those are the main things that you would. Scholarship and chance of getting admitted, I think are the two important things of an intake that you should consider. Right? Yeah.
thank you, Chechi.
Yeah.
Sir, Chechi, Snigdha raised a question. For a first year student, when should we start preparing for going abroad?
When should we start preparing for going abroad? So it's a long process. Like if you want to start going abroad, like I said, keep that in mind, and do extracurriculars, as in co-curriculars, to broaden your knowledge, right? You won't be able to make it with just your coursework in your undergrad, because it's very limited. For internships, do that. Second year on all is when you get into the biotech, because first year is general. stuff. So from second year, I think students already do that. Even we did that. Go for internships, start learning courses, check the different, you know, uh, career opportunities. What all fields are there? Do courses to understand. Second year would be a good start, just to see how the field is and understand. So even you pretty much won't know anything about the field in second year, so that's a good time to learn. Thank you, Rohit, for addressing that. Yeah, he's in Sweden right now. So, summer intake. So, he says summer intake will be better for both scholarship and meeting people. That's so you have your answer, Vishnu. Yeah. So, yeah, second
that
year would be good. Yeah.
okay. So I think that's the end of the Q&A session.
Yeah.
Hoping all of your questions have been answered. We come to the end of today's webinar. Sir, do you like to share any thoughts regarding this?
Yeah, I have already shared. Rinji had a conversation with him. Anyway, thank you, Amy, once again. So actually keep in touch. Actually, our first year students are. I don't know whether first year students are there in this group. Any first year students in this group?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many are there? Okay. If only very few students are there, I think we'll request Amy to give one more talk at a later stage to our first year students, because
Sure, sir.
we have to inspire the first year students as well, no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. First year means current first year as well as the 2020 admission student. They're also first year.
Yes, sir.
We treat
Yes,
as
sir.
freshers in our college because the first
Yeah.
time they are visiting our campus. And
Yeah.
they get admitted into the first year in 2020.
Mhm.
So anyway, we had a very nice time interacting with you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Biju, I think you can add something.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Amy.
No problem, sir. Thank you so much.
Amy had volunteered to actually give this webinar, this interactive session.
Yeah.
While joining US, before she left for US, I think she dropped me a message. I was in Delhi at that time. So she dropped me a message. She indicated that she has got admission in the US and therefore she is departing shortly. At that point in time itself, she told me that she's going to do a master's in medical biotechnology. And one thing I had very clearly indicated at that point, Amy, you remember, alumni have important responsibilities towards their alma mater. So I'm happy that I'm very delighted to see that you have fulfilled that particular commitment at this early stage. After completing your master's course in medical biotechnology, I want you back here once again for delivering a technical webinar, okay, in some area pertinent
Yes,
to medical biotechnology. So wish you all the best.
Thank
See
you so
soon.
much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sushmita, ma'am. Hi, ma'am. I just saw your name. I don't know
Yeah.
who all
Sushmita
are
is there.
here. Yeah.
Sushmita is there.
I just saw. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, Sushmita
Hi,
is there.
Sushmita, ma'am. Not sure if I could hear you.
Sushmita, are you there?
I think there's some internet issue at her end. She has
Yeah.
Yeah.
left the meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other faculty here? I would just like to say hi. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Rohit
No,
is
I
also
don't.
there, no? Rohit.
Yeah.
Hi, Rohit.
Hi, sir. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. How about you? How about your
Same here,
course?
sir.
So
It's
you're
going really great. Yeah, sir. Like,
Hello?
it's going really great right now.
okay. What is the
Hello.
area you have chosen for
Hi,
your
Sushmita,
course?
ma'am.
Yeah, Sushmita is
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Hi, ma'am.
Hello. Hello. Am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am. You're audible.
Hello.
there. Yeah, it's
Oh,
audible.
there's a
Sushmita, it's
network
audible.
issue.
Hello. Anyway, what I would say is you have really inspired the spirits of our students. No? Definitely, a handful of students would get motivated out of your talk. No?
Thank you, sir.
Definitely, because we expect that many more students would join. They will take a cue from you, and and definitely they will also continue their academics in prestigious and premier universities abroad. We would like them to see in such universities,
Yes, sir. I really
Hello.
hope they.
Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah,
Sushmita ma'am.
Hello, sir. Sir, കേൾക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നുണ്ടോ?
yeah, it's audible. It's
Yes,
audible.
sir. Yes, ma'am.
It's
Kekam.
It's audible.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, it's audible. It's audible. Uh,
Hello.
yeah, it's audible. Your voice is audible. You're audible.
Yeah, she left the meeting.
She left. Yeah, hi Rohit. Yeah.
Hi,
let's,
sir.
get back to Rohit. So you have finished one semester there?
Actually, I'm in the second period of my first semester, so I completed one course,
Yeah.
which was in methods in molecular biology.
Okay.
Right now, I'm doing like a course on molecular genetics of eukaryotes, which is basically under a professor who is researching on the causes of aging in yeast, which is like really interesting research
Yeah.
regarding telomeres and stuff. So it's going really good, sir.
Okay. Actually, we need your support as well. No, you have to arrange
Definitely,
a talk.
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, if like fellow like juniors usually contact me if they have anything like I think Amy might have mentioned it, like we receive a lot of messages from our juniors like, is this a good course, like what should we do and stuff. So I think what she took up was really admiring right now. Kudos to you, Amy. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
People like you should motivate our students. No?
Definitely.
You have to guide our students. No?
So wrapping up, on behalf of the Biotech Department of SET College of Engineering and Evogen, a very big thank you to you, MHAG, for giving us such a wonderful comprehension about this topic. And I firmly believe that it was a really helping hand for many students present here to get such an informative overview from you. We wish you good luck in all your future endeavors, and we are so much certain that you'll definitely achieve everything you work towards. Next.
Thank you so much, Vismaya.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye
Thank
all.
you everyone for showing so much interest in attending this webinar. Ultimately, thank you to all the organizers, teachers, and staffs for making it possible to arrange this pleasant session. Also, please don't forget to fill the feedback form which had been posted in the chat box. We will be extremely grateful to receive your reviews and suggestions regarding this session. Until then, thank you and stay safe.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.